Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's webinar. We'll get going in just over a minute. Thank you. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Ask Me Anything on Microsoft Teams and Remote Working. I'm your host today, Peter Hunt, Head of Marketing here at Action Point. And we're running this series of webinars, of course, to address the many challenges that companies are facing with regard to remote working. This is one of many webinars we've been running on a weekly and bi-weekly basis. We hope to run many more over the coming weeks as we come to grips with the current remote working situation. Just wanted to take a second to acknowledge the challenging circumstances that many of you find yourself in. We've been thrust into this remote working situation across the board, and I just want to let you know that Action Point is here to help. Please feel free to reach out to your account manager with any queries that you may have. We hope you find the information on today's webinar useful, and if you have any feedback, we'll be sending a survey around afterwards. Just to do some housekeeping, Finian Nally will jump on in a little bit to take us through the presentation today. There'll be a Q&A at the end, which I will moderate. So please leave your questions in the question box throughout the webinar, and we'll endeavour to get to as many of those as possible. If there's any questions you want to do a one-to-one on, me or Finian are happy to field those questions. You'll see Finian's details on his slide just there. Just before we kick off, I'd like to just put a poll up to you. The poll, just to get an understanding of maybe some of your remote working conditions. So the question is, what is the biggest challenge you are experiencing with regard to remote working? And I have 5 choices displayed there: communication with your team, distraction in the home office, productivity, connectivity, including Wi-Fi, and equipment, including webcams, microphones, laptops, things like that. So if you want to take a couple of seconds there just to give us your answers, and I'll hand over to Finian then. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for all your feedback there. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Finian Nally, who is Head of Microsoft Cloud Services here at Action Point. Finian.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, everyone. I'll just say a quick hello over video. My name is Finian Nally. I'm Head of Microsoft Cloud Solutions with Action Point. And we're going to run through a few things today. Really, the content is a quick overview of Microsoft Teams, give you a sense of what it is. Really, we'll get into the meat of it then and discuss how Teams can help with remote working. We'll discuss how you can be successful with Teams and with remote working. And as Peter said, then we'll jump into the Ask Me Anything and really get your questions answered. So as Peter said, feel free to type in questions throughout and we'll get through them at the end. So first and foremost, what is Microsoft Teams? Well, Microsoft Teams is a hub for teamwork within Microsoft 365. It's really the place where you get everything done. It's the jump off point into your world of work and everything that you're doing in that. And if we take a step back and maybe look at the history of Teams, now that it's actually 3 years old as of last week. 6 months ago, when I was speaking to people, we were talking about numbers about how many people were actually using Teams. The number at that stage was about 20 million. A month ago, when I was speaking to people, that number had increased to 33 million. But actually, if we look at things in the last couple of weeks alone, those numbers have increased up to 44 million. So we're seeing an 11 million increase in the space of a matter of weeks. So this is a solution that is no longer new. Like I said, it's been around for 3 years, been used by millions and millions of people globally, both businesses and consumers and in education as well. And really, it's become one of the tools of choice for remote working and one of the essential tools for remote working, given the new world that we're all in right now. So just to touch on a couple of things, what does Teams actually do? So at a simple level, one-on-one and group chat, so instant messaging between your colleagues allows you to get that communication across very, very easily. It also does powerful online meetings. So again, you're able to do video calls with your customers or with your teams. It can be further expanded to deliver enterprise calling. So it actually can be your full-blown telephony system, meaning that your clients can contact you, you can contact them the same way you would over a normal landline. And it also is built in with the key office apps that you use on a day-to-day basis. And all of these things that I'm mentioning here now, I'm going to do a deeper dive in a couple of minutes on it. But the likes of your Word, your Excel, your PowerPoint, all of those things are natively built into Teams. So again, from that concept of using this as your jump off point. In addition, Teams also is a very, very powerful platform. And often when we're having conversations with customers about Teams, the view is that Teams is about video conferencing and maybe instant messaging, and that's it. But it actually can do a lot more, and it can extend in a lot more ways into third-party applications and help you deliver the work that you're trying to do, not only within Teams or within the Microsoft suite, but also outside of the Microsoft suite of tools as well. So it has a wide degree of integration on it. And again, we'll touch on that in more detail in a little while. One thing to note about Microsoft 365 and Teams and various other apps in particular is this isn't something that you start the day with and you're left with the same version of it in 2 years' time or in 3 years' time. Teams is continuously evolving and continuously evolving based on user feedback. The more feedback that Teams gets, the quicker that the Microsoft team who build it actually make those changes. So some of the things that we've seen come on stream and are due to come on stream since launch are the likes of inline message translation. So again, if you're collaborating with colleagues across borders, across language barriers, which many of us are right now, depending on who you work with, you're able to do that message translation in real time. Live captions and subtitles can also be displayed on the screen. As well as that, we can use it from any device. So if I have a mobile device, a tablet, a Windows laptop, maybe even a Linux laptop, I can use it wherever I am. And also new features like background blurring, customizing the background. Not all of us have the luxury of a dedicated home office. Some of us are working out of the kitchen, working out of the back bedroom. So we can use features like background blur to blur out the background and allow for that meeting to be delivered in a more professional way. So to get into a little bit deeper and to discuss about Teams and remote working and how do we take those features and what does that actually mean on a day-to-day basis for me? When I was talking to customers about remote working, going back even 12 months ago, I often use this slide here to say, okay, this is where things are going in the future. 72% of employees will be working remotely by 2020. The reality is these numbers have been blown out of the water and we're all working remotely. A third of meetings are 100% virtual in nature. All our meetings, certainly in Action Point, every meeting we have is virtual in nature right now. We simply cannot go and do face-to-face anymore. And what we're seeing is that while a large majority of people are joining over traditional devices like desktops, like their laptops, we're seeing equally as many people coming in over their mobile device, be it their smartphone or their tablet. So video calling, Teams calling, all of that kind of thing is the normal right now. It's not becoming the normal, it has become the normal. So stepping into how do we work and how do we start to leverage Teams?
Sorry, Finian, I'm going to have to interrupt you there just for 1 second. There's a couple of people having trouble with audio. Can I just get you to double check? I can hear you perfectly. And maybe just for everyone else, just to make sure that their audio is connected correctly. And we'll try and resolve this situation. I think I can hear you perfectly. But I think there's a couple of people just struggling with some audio at the moment. So just make sure, for people who are listening in, just make sure your audio is switched on within GoToWebinar. That will hopefully resolve it.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think just make sure you're connected via computer audio, or you can select in your audio the phone audio and dial in over the phone. But just maybe check the volume on your speaker. I think most people are checking in there; they can hear things fine. Okay, so you might just perfect. Continue on. So, yeah, in the context of remote working and taking Teams, where do we start? What's the first thing that we're going to impact or use Teams for? The first is around instant messaging. So the screenshot you'll have in front of you there is a snapshot I took from my own Teams last week alone. And in the space of 1 day, I've been involved in 13 separate conversations with different teams or with different individuals across our business. Now, ordinarily in the past, they would have been 13 separate one-liner emails that probably would have filled up my inbox and would have started to fill up other people's inboxes. Chances are some of that conversation would have been completely ignored. People might have come back to me 24 or 48 hours later. And really that flow of conversation, that organic nature of getting the information when I need it wouldn't have happened if we were to keep that siloed over email. By using instant messaging and using that one-on-one and one-to-many chat, I'm able to send people quick updates. Hey, can you send me on that phone number? Have you got that piece of work done? Are we still going to have that meeting at 12 o'clock? That quick and very concise pieces of information I'm able to get back and forth very, very rapidly. But I'm also able to set my expectation around that. I'm also able to see, right, does a person have a green dot beside them? Are they online and actually active? Am I actually going to get a response? Or do they have an orange icon beside them? Yes, they're online, but you know what? They may be off making lunch for the kids or doing something else, but they're not actually at their screen right now. Or maybe they have a red icon beside them that, you know, they're in a meeting, they're doing something else, they're doing another piece of work. And even if I instant message them, my expectations should be set, well, not to get a response immediately. So for us and for many of our clients using this right now, using that instant messaging reduces the overall communication burden by taking it out of email, and also gives an expectation about, right, how quickly am I going to get that piece of information back? Or do I need to actually pick up the phone and talk to that person directly? Stepping it up from there are all around video chat, video conversations, and video calling. And Microsoft does this, or Microsoft Teams does this exceptionally well. So it allows you to have a video conference with one or many of not only your teammates, but also external people as well. So maybe you're, business that does a lot of face-to-face interaction with clients where that's no longer possible. Using Teams, you can now have that somewhat face-to-face conversation over video and being able to engage with people, see their facial expressions, really, get under the hood of a good meeting the same way you would in a meeting room or one-to-one environment. So Teams does that very, very well. All of our meetings, like I said at the start, in Action Point are virtual right now, and we always turn on our video so we can see everyone. We've even taken it a step further and saying, well, actually, not only do we have formal video meetings, but right now we have virtual coffee breaks. We have virtual Friday drinks kind of thing to bring people in, to almost bring up that social aspect as much as the business aspect. And when I'm in that video conversation mode, I actually have a lot of features at my fingertips. So as well as being able to see the person and do things like blur my background out, I can actually share my screen. So if we're working on a document, a proposal, an Excel file, a spreadsheet, whatever I'm working on, or even an internal system, an ERP or CRM system, I'm able to share my screen with everyone that's on that call. They can see what I'm seeing. We can work together. We can get things done very, very rapidly. In addition to that, I'm also able to record. So at the click of a button, I can record a meeting, and that meeting is there for me to view back on later in time. Or maybe not everyone made the meeting. Maybe there was clashes and people couldn't get in. Well, they can come back and they can view that recording at a later date. So it gives lots of flexibility that's very, very easy for everyone to get access to. Branching out for there, and again, thinking of remote working, the core of Microsoft Team is this kind of hub for teamwork place. It's the place where I have my teams, my channels, the place where I store my information. Maybe it's a conversation around a project, a piece of work, a client, maybe it's files to do with it, maybe it's the video conversation. All of that is centralized around what's called a team, the icons that you're seeing there. But one feature which we're seeing work very, very well for a lot of companies is using an organizational wide team. So how do we start to communicate out effectively to our staff about, what's our remote working policy, how we're enabling remote working, what's the latest impact to our business on COVID-19, what's the latest HR aspects. If we think about the traditional approach to that, a lot of that is over email, all company email blasts, and 50 to 60% of people may see that. The other 40 to 50% may just completely ignore or are so busy they don't see that email. Some people have gone down the route of implementing intranet sites through SharePoint or other tools. And again, we find that, that is visible or accessible to a cohort of people, but those numbers often decline rapidly in time. So by using organizational wide teams, we're able to centralize that communication wide conversation or information and give it to people in a place that they can consume it whenever they are. Given the fact that me as a remote worker, I'm using Teams anyways for my project management, my calling, my conferencing, that information is there for me, ready to digest that at any point. So it's a really, really good feature. Like I mentioned earlier on, Teams is that central place for your work, but it's giving you that work in context. Again, if we take a step back and think of the old way of doing things, I send an email to 2 or 3 people in the business about a piece of work. Someone comes back to me today, other people come back to me tomorrow. There might be follow-on attachments, and we might need to bring in someone else into that email thread later on down the line. The reality is it is very hard to work, and information often completely gets lost in that whole email thread or email way of working. What Teams does is it brings everything together. So it's bringing that traditional conversation or follow-up we would have had over email. It's bringing the files together. It's bringing the emails together, but it's also bringing additional things, maybe project plans, maybe it's other pieces of information, external sources of information, all in the one area. So what you're seeing there, for example, is, okay, I have my team, my go-to-market plan, all the files are there ready for me to access whenever I want. I can then look at, okay, well, what's the plan around that? What tasks have been assigned to people, and when am I going to do that? So all that information is brought together in one central place. From there, and again, thinking in the world that we're in about remote working, how do we start to take things further, to extend Teams out beyond its traditional boundaries? And the way we do that is through integrating with some other applications that we have. So as an example, we can integrate with our Power BI. So if we've got information in our business that is normally siloed in different places, we can use a tool like Power BI and surface that through Teams to say, here's the latest performance report. Here's how many sales we're going to do this month. Here's how our business has been impacted by COVID-19. We can surface all that information in a very, very visual fashion, but in a tool that everyone is using on a day-to-day basis, that being Microsoft Teams. We can even go a step further with that and say, well, actually, we have existing business processes, or we have ways of doing things that were paper-based tasks. And do you know what? We can't do paper-based tasks anymore because we're no longer seeing each other. We don't have printers, and it just isn't practical anymore. So we can start to build our own applications using tools like Powerups and bring them through and surface them through Microsoft Teams. An example you're seeing on screen is actually a Powerup that Microsoft built themselves 2 weeks ago, a crisis communication tool. So very, very quickly and easily put together, but to be able to deliver it to the team rather than going off into a separate application, I'm able to deliver that in Microsoft Teams and surface that information very, very easily. So again, if you're thinking about, okay, what paper-based tasks do we have in our business and how can I help my team do things more efficiently or better in this way of remote working, Microsoft Teams gives you that ability to integrate not only with old processes and modernizing them, but also with other software applications and third-party applications that you may have. So a lot of flexibility and extensibility in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a quick demo of it, and I'm conscious that I am going through this very, very quickly. So like I said at the start, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat box there and we'll get to them at the end. So in looking at the Teams client, again, it is a very, very simple client, and it's something that I suppose in our experience, what we've found is that end users or people starting their Teams journey actually get to grips with it very, very quickly. So what we're seeing over on the left-hand side is our key icons. So our activity, our chat, our instant messaging, the Teams where all our work is, our calling, and then maybe any other apps which the company has decided to surface for us. So at a basic level, I have my instant messaging. So I can see Alex has sent me a message there. Are you ready for today's webinar? And I can simply reply back, yes, I am. Very, very easy, very, very streamlined. And again, Alex can reply that, great, best of luck. And I'm getting that information straight back to me in context. Maybe that was previous kind of instant messaging or quick information we might have kicked over email. It's no longer clogging up my inbox. But say, for example, Alex here, and I want to know, okay, well, who is Alex? Well, I can see Alex is a marketing assistant. He's in my organization. I have his contact details here. I have his email details. But you know what? I can look at the organizational view of him and see, right, actually, Alex is here in my team. I can see, or in this team here, I can see who else he works with. Oh, he's Adele's colleague. Yeah, I know who he is, kind of thing. So I'm able to get that information, that quick chat back and forth with Alex very, very quickly, or indeed anyone within my organization. I can also quickly and easily extend that or elevate that to a simple voice call, a simple audio call, or a video call, again, with just one click. So again, very, very simple, simple way to do things. We then go into my team, and here's my kind of org-wide team that I spoke about earlier on. So what I've done in here is I have my standard team. I have a section in here, or a channel in here for operational performance. And what I've actually done in this scenario is, well, we have a Power BI report for our latest sales. What's going on? I need access to that information very, very readily. So rather than the previous way of having to go out and look for that information or look for that Power BI report, I now have that surface straight in my team here, so I can see exactly what's going on. Likewise, I can also see what's going on with HR. I can see they had an important announcement there. So they're going to answer our questions on a meeting at 2 o'clock today. Great. You know, I didn't know that was going to happen. If they had sent me an email on that, chances are I probably would have ignored it. So yes, great, it's in there and it's tagged as important. And I can also see by looking through my other teams and channels that it's in here, there's other pieces of information called out in red that could be important, or where someone has referenced me to say, hey, we need a response from you on this. You know, we have the research and development team. Some people have replied here. You know, what's your take on that? We can even go and extend things further. So for example, if we have a remote working tips channel in here, we have all the information we need about remote working. But if I'm an employee and I know, well, I've only started, I'm new to remote working, I don't have a webcam, I don't have a screen, how can I request that equipment? The previous process might have been, okay, send an email to someone and hopefully they've gone back. So as a business, what we can do is we can streamline things. We can use tools like Microsoft Forms, which is built into Microsoft 365, to say, hey, do you know what? I would like a new monitor and a headset. I don't have one right now. I can submit that. So I can submit that, and that can go through and be delivered straight away to whoever looks after that. Again, I'm in my remote working tips channel here, and I'm seeing some training videos that the company has provided for me. Great. I can digest that whenever I want. So again, from the point of view of being able to access information in context or very, very readily, everything is there for me in Teams, whether it's to do with remote working, whether it's to do with a piece of project or a piece of work, it's all there for me, very, very accessible and very, very easy to get at. Go back into the presentation for a second and really just to summarize, you know, what we've spoken about. So, you know, there's almost, in your team's journey, there's almost 3 key elements of it. One is having those quick and effective comms, using it for instant messaging, using it for the video and calling, and for meetings with both internal teams, but also with customers. And, you know, certainly over the last few days, I've had an awful lot of conversation with our own customers about how they can interact with their customers, how they can continue that conversation that they ordinarily would have had at face-to-face basis. And video calling within Teams is that way to do it. The second point being information within context, right? How do we start to extract all of that information, all of that previously siloed information out of email, out of places that it was lost in before, and bring it together centrally within Teams, within context, using Teams and using channels. And then thirdly is around extending that further. So bringing in data from third-party tools, be it simple information like Power BI data to visualize your numbers, be it things like, you know, I want customer bookings using the booking apps, or be it that I want to use Powerups to create custom quick applications. So again, it's that kind of 3-stage journey. So that's it from a remote working point of view. And, you know, from a technical point of view, that's great, but how do you actually start to make this successful? What's the reality of it? What are the things you need to be aware of to actually make this work for your business? First and foremost is equipment, and this is something that we see, I suppose, quite regularly with people, where maybe someone is trying to use Teams or a video calling tool, and they're using the headphones from their iPhone from 3 years ago, and they're wondering why their call quality is so poor, or they're in an area where fundamentally broadband isn't great, and they're going to have that poor experience as well. So it's key when using this stuff that, you know, connectivity is important, and it's important for all of remote working, but it's also important that you have Team certified equipment, and you're using equipment that is up to the job. And Team certified doesn't necessarily mean expensive. So for example, today my setup here is I have a laptop, I have a 24-inch Dell monitor, and I have a simple Logitech webcam, which does both my camera and my voice. That's my setup. Not expensive, very straightforward, but it's Team certified and it works well for me, and I'm giving that quality throughout all my meetings. The next thing to consider is kind of, you would think is basic, but again, often when people come from, I suppose, an office-based environment into remote working, they often forget about those traditional rules. So it's something we speak regularly to our clients is about, your approach to meetings and how you set things up. Again, it's important that before your meeting, you're setting up the context, you're getting the documents ready, you're chatting with the key people on that meeting so that they know that it's happening and what it's about. That during the meeting, you're using the tools very, very well. So sharing documents, co-authoring documents, working together on files at the same time, rather than actually taking notes and then spending another hour typing up those notes into the Word document. And after meetings, again, using the notes tool or the meeting notes tool to follow up with people, to create actions, to assign tasks, doing all those things that are part of Microsoft 365, but I suppose bringing it all together to improve your own productivity, but also make a better experience for everyone. I suppose in addition to those kind of things, there are the kind of softer things to consider. Remote working, while it's normal for some people, it's brand new for the vast majority of people. And this isn't something that we have had time to get a good lead into and maybe a bit of training on. It's been something that's been forced on everyone quite rapidly. So some tips to really get you up and running, when you are remote working, have a designated space. This is your remote working space. That's the area that you are going to go to for work. Almost consider it your work zone within the office, and try and minimize those disruptions if possible. The reality is, even in our own businesses, disruptions are happening, and we're seeing people adapt and change their work practices, and generally businesses are accommodating of that. It's important as well to get your video ready. Make sure you can actually be seen on it. Make sure you're in the center of the screen. Use things like background blur, and obviously turn the video on when it's possible to do so. Also, like I said, in terms of meetings, do that co-authoring, do things in real time, and even like we're doing today in webinars, communicate externally to customers. It's important to leverage the tools within Teams very, very rapidly. Communicate, essential element to it. And what we found is that those traditional bump into people in the hallway type conversations, or canteen conversations, or lunchtime conversations sometimes don't happen anymore when we're all in the remote working mode. So it's important that we actually make time for them to have those virtual water cooler moments. I think I mentioned earlier on where we set up on an almost daily basis at this stage virtual coffee breaks with various members of our teams and even people who are not part of our teams to say, hey, what's going on? How's this working out for you? How are your kids doing? What's happening in your life? To really almost park that work conversation, we class it as a non-shop talk conversation, and get involved there. But I think that extends further into the role of managers as well, and the role of the senior leadership team is to lead that by example, is to say, yeah, well, as a leadership team, we're doing these things, we're communicating via video, but you know what, we're also going to check in with our staff. We're going to have those one-on-one and one-to-many video calls to say, how are you doing? And here's the health of the business, here's the state of play, here's everything that's going on. The last thing just to mention, I suppose, is resources. How do you start to step into this? How do you and your wider team start to actually learn this? So the first one there is a Microsoft site. It's a Teams training site or Teams video site, which gives you quick and concise or easily digestible videos for you and your colleagues to say, okay, well, how do I upload a file? How do I set up a channel? How do I start a chat? How do I start a meeting? All of that information is there. In addition, we also have the Action Point Academy, which will soon be the Action Point Virtual Academy, where we'll be delivering training on an ongoing basis to you and your team if required. But they're good solutions to know that they're available, so that you're not just thrown into the deep end on this, and you can actually get the training that you need. That, I suppose, in the time we have, is the sweep and summary, and it's gives you some insight into some of the areas around Teams. So I think we might move into the questions. I think a few have been posted there, and I'll answer any queries you have.
Brilliant, Finian. Thank you very much. Another great presentation on Teams. We've tons of questions to get to, but first I just wanted to review our poll just to see what kind of challenges people are experiencing, and maybe we can just chat a bit around this. So what the poll was: what is the biggest challenge you are experiencing with regard to remote working? And just some of the answers there. So I suppose the the two big ones, or three big ones even, were distraction in the home office, communication with your team, and connectivity, Wi-Fi. Could you maybe address a few of those points, Finian, from your own experience?
In terms of connectivity and Wi-Fi, Peter, is it?
Maybe just the distractions in the home office, and you made a good point there around setting up a dedicated workspace. But are there any other kind of tips and tactics that people can maybe deploy to maybe evade some of those distractions?
Yeah, like I think it's a difficult time for a lot of people. You know, childcare is an issue, having space is an issue. All of those kind of things factor in. So I think first and foremost, you know, in our experience, employers are accommodating at that, and not only employers but also team members are accommodating at that. You know, the ideal scenario is that you have a dedicated space, be it an office if you're lucky enough, be it the back bedroom, or be it a designated area in the sitting room that is your office space. From that point of view, it means that, you know, when you're at that space or that desk or table, you're in your work zone. And it is a very, very hard thing to do to flip from work mode into home mode. And a comment I actually heard today is, you know, the reality is we're not actually working from home. You are at home during a crisis trying to work. So it's kind of a different way to do it. So, you know, try and take those notions of the dedicated space, that area where you're working, but you will have to make accommodations around working hours. And I think most employers and most colleagues are accommodating of that at this stage.
Can you touch on the communication with your team aspect? I mean, look, it's quite relevant to the topic today. And I guess a lot of people will be working with maybe different teams, so they might have to plug into finance, operations, maybe their IT team. Maybe give us an overview of how teams could maybe help to manage that communication gap.
Yeah, I think, Peter, like I went through there a while ago, it's about, I suppose, that structured and unstructured communication. So if we take structured, for example, finance, let's say we're having a daily meeting across finance and operations. We want to know what the performance of the business is today, keep our finger closely on the pulse. Well, that's something I'd probably set up as a dedicated team or a dedicated channel to say, okay, you know, my accounts person, I want you to upload at 9 o'clock every morning the financial performance, have those files in there ready to go. At 10 o'clock, we're going to have an online meeting every day, daily stand up to see what's going on. On the unstructured aspect, it's more those things that are organic. You know, did you hear there's been a new announcement by the government? Can I have that piece of information? Or I have a new client contacting us and we want to do something about it. So they're more the kind of instant messaging, quick video calls, those type of communications. So it really depends on what you're doing in both of those scenarios. But I think the third one to mention as well, and something we keep encouraging, not only internally within Action Point, but also our staff, is to have those non-work conversations as well. Because I think what we found in doing the virtual coffee breaks, the daily stand-ups, is that it actually surfaces a lot of relevant information. You know, not only what's going on in people's personal lives and social lives, keeps up with their mental health, those kind of things, but can also feed into the business as well to say, well, actually, I had a conversation on the phone with client X yesterday, and they're saying that, you know, they're doing really well because they're selling X product. Those kind of anecdotal pieces of information can often be difficult to share in a structured environment. So it's important to have those kind of unstructured calls as well.
It's virtualizing that whole, you know, the water cooler conversation, I think, which is very, very important. I'm gonna skip off the poll for a second, because there's a number of questions that I'd like to get to. The first one in here is from Gavin, and there's a similar question further down the thread as well. Can these chats be cleared daily like Skype? So I presume he's looking at the chat thread within Teams.
Yeah, so I suppose to answer your question in a number of ways, Gavin, Teams is an enterprise tool, and as such, we have enterprise governance built in behind the scenes. So in other words, we can enforce that all chats are stored, can't be deleted, you know, are there forever and a day kind of thing. But we can also turn that off as well. So it's really down to the business at the end of the day to say, well, you know, do I want that information stored permanently, or do I want to give people the ability to delete their chats? You know, maybe they've spelled something wrong or they posted something in the wrong place and they need to delete it. I think the other thing you might be referring to is the persistent chat. So by, you know, when I'm in my Teams client, I can see the chat. If I haven't had a conversation with someone for 3 weeks, for example, when I jump back in to have another conversation or another instant message with them, I can still see all that previous conversation history. So it's capturing that all in the one place. it's not kind of lost like Skype for Business chat was kind of lost in one of your folders within Outlook. So it means you can, I suppose, keep on top of the previous conversation as well. I hope that answers your question.
Brilliant. So the next question is more from the admin or the IT manager perspective. It's from Alan. Organization-wide, in Teams, how are leavers handled? So people exiting the company.
It's the same way as any other team. Their information is there, and I suppose your leaver policy or your leaver process is handled in the same way. So yeah, it's the exact same as a normal team member leaving. So
it'd be Active Directory there, Finney, wouldn't it? Where the account is removed, and then naturally the Teams is deactivated for that account.
Exactly, yeah. But if there's more detail on that, happy to have a conversation offline, Alan.
Yeah, super. Okay, so joining meetings, can a company-wide setting control announcing? Sorry, I need to clarify that. Sorry, excuse me. It's from Alan again. Joining meetings, can a company-wide setting control announcing users joining or leaving meetings? Okay, so can we? Yeah, can you put a setting within your organizational teams which announces users joining or leaving meetings?
So that feature is there when someone is coming in over the landline. It's not actually there where someone is coming in over the traditional Teams. I suppose if we think about traditional meetings and I suppose maybe older ways of doing video conferencing, the annoyance aspect was that, you know, if you have a meeting with 20 people in it and everyone gets announced in and out throughout the meeting, it can become quite distracting. So no, that's not there for Teams, and you know, personally, I'd say that's a good thing.
Okay, very good. Next question from Owen. How long are chat and other communication records kept? Can they be deleted? So that's similar to the question we had above.
Absolutely. So again, it goes back to your own governance and policies and what you want to set up in the background. You know, if you're in a regulated industry, for example, that has to keep things for X amount of years, obviously that can be set up through retention policies and various other data deletion ways.
Mary McGuire, she has left, but I actually think the question is quite good. Can I flag a task to someone outside of my team?
Yeah, I suppose it really depends how you're doing it. So if you're creating a task in Planner, which is what I showed there earlier on, you can create that task for other people, but obviously permission settings come into play there. So you may not be able to actually set up the task in the first place for someone. So there's a kind of a nuance there as to where you're actually setting up that task and if that person actually has permission to it in the first place.
Okay, very good. And you're getting into the Planner app then, Finian, aren't you, within?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, very good. The question from Jared, how was the page you showed with the training videos created? Is it an embedded web page or something built in a Teams app or something else? That was a demo you were doing.
Of the few things I showed, so for example, the training videos, that's simply a web page. So it's simply adding in a URL, putting that as a tab across the top. So again, I can do that for any web page that I want. The crisis management tool that I showed, that's actually a Power App. And again, that is imported in as an application into Teams itself. So different ways depending on the type of application you have.
Excellent. Another question from Alan. Does Teams have the same functionality of response groups as in Skype for Business?
That's one I'm not familiar with, Alan. We could come back to you on that one later.
Yeah, perfect. Question from Paul. How to add MS Whiteboard? Also, can a web application be added?
So 2 questions there. So yeah, whiteboard is included. So in any of your meetings, you can turn on a whiteboard. And so it gives you that ability to have that kind of, if you're using a touchscreen device, draw things up there. And the second question was, can any web application be added? Absolutely. So as long as you have the URL for that, you can add that in as a tab.
Fantastic, thank you. Question from Amanda. Is there a raise your hand option in Teams?
Not yet, but it's coming. So that feature was announced last week, actually. So we should see that coming on later in the year. So again, from the point of view, if you have a lot of people in a meeting, rather than everyone shouting and clamoring to get their voice heard, the raise the hand feature is something that's coming shortly.
Excellent. Do customers need to have Teams in order to participate in a video call? From Moira.
No, they don't. So again, thinking of a world where you're trying to communicate with your external clients, as long as they have a web browser and internet access, they're going to be able to join the call.
Brilliant. I just had a question there from Francois, just about the presentation and the video. So Francois, we'll send those out later on this afternoon or maybe tomorrow. So we have an email going out. I'm sorry I didn't get the one from Friday, but I'll make sure to get that over to you today or tomorrow. Okay. Mary, can you post a training link again? Last slide. So
Yeah, that's
that's
up there
that
now.
one there, Mary. Brilliant. I think Owen McCabe with a general warning. Deleting is better for your water cooler chats. Warning not to type something you would want to say in front of HR. Well, that's up to yourself. Can the user be hidden? Question from Alan.
Again, I'm not sure what you're getting at there. So all users are visible. You know, it's a case of if I'm a member, a team member here, I'm absolutely going to be visible. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what you're getting at there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure either. Can a raise hand function question again? So that was answered. There's no raise hand function in Teams at the minute, but as Finian said, it's in the pipeline coming down the track. Guests outside the organization to join team, that's been answered. Okay, I think that's everything. If there's any last minute questions, guys, you want to get in, please do add them in. Other than that,
Yeah, just one question there. I see Peter from Sharon. Again about the raised hand. You know, so the way I alluded to it earlier on, the way Teams is developed is based on something called user voice. So if you look for a website, just Google it there, Teams user voice. It's where Microsoft essentially take all their feedback. So any request that you want, if something's important to you, put the feedback in there, vote for some of the features, and that is actually what their development team look at. So for example, there's a feature there around a request for more video windows in the display. And that was something that wasn't really a strong feature request up until 2 weeks ago. Now it's the #1 feature request, and the Microsoft team have responded back to say, we're actively working on this. We're going to have something very, very shortly for you. So again, the point being, the raise hand facility has been announced, but if there's any of those other features that you're looking for, go to Microsoft Teams user voice and put in what your request is there.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well, just how rapidly how quickly Teams has evolved over a 3-year period. You know, brand new features being rolled out all the time. I know it's something you touched on in your slide. So it's an exciting time to be on the platform. Yeah. So I think have we anything else coming in there, guys? Oh yeah, Bernard O'Keefe, can you monetize Teams, e.g. training, videos, etc.?
Yeah, I think, Bernard, it's like anything. I suppose there is no, right now, there's no e-commerce functionality in front of it. You would have to have your own e-commerce facility in front of it and then give people access thereafter or give them one-on-one consultations thereafter. I know Microsoft Bookings, which is part of 365, is due to have some level of e-commerce functionality. I'm just not familiar with it at the moment. But yes, of course, you can do training. You can do one-on-one training, one-to-group training. How you collect the revenue or how you give people access is up to you thereafter. You know.
Yeah, it's something we've looked at recently, Bernard. So through WordPress, there's quite a few features you can integrate kind of Stripe pretty easily. I suppose it's how you'd set up a virtual training, kind of a business line as well. So there's certainly options outside of Teams to run those types of events. So yeah, brilliant. Just one more there from Amanda Finian. We tend to have to ask everyone to mute their mic due to feedback. Is there any other way around this?
So typically, Amanda, the feedback issue is down to equipment. It's down to poor equipment for one or more individuals. So that'll be the first port of call. Teams also has a reporting facility built in behind the scenes on the admin center, which allows you to look at every call that you've had and see where the poor performance was. So in other words, you can bring it down to a user and device level to see, okay, I can see we had feedback on that call. Do you know what that feedback was from John? And it was from John's microphone. Maybe we need to get John a new headset or a new microphone or something like that. So the quick answer is, feedback is typically down to some persons or maybe a couple of people's devices, and thereafter it's on people. Excuse me, it's on people to manage how they jump in and jump out of meetings. But the organizer, I think there's a follow-on question there from Owen. Yes, absolutely. The organizer or even other people on the call, depending on how you have the call set up, can mute someone. So if I'm on a call and I can see someone is causing a lot of feedback or their dog is barking in the background, I can mute them.
Yeah, it's a very, very useful feature, especially for larger groups. Okay, I think that's all of the questions for today. Just a few nice notes of thank you to Finian for today's presentation and AMA. As I said, guys, we've got lots more webinars coming up over the coming days and weeks. In fact, we have one on Friday, which looks at the broader the broader features of Microsoft 365 with a quick look at security in there as well. So if you want to register for that, do. If you want to check out any of our upcoming webinars, go to actionpoint.e/academy. All of our webinars are posted there, or keep an eye out on the Action Point newsletter, which is going out quite regularly at the moment. Look, brilliant to get everyone on the webinar today. We hope you've enjoyed it. We certainly have. And looking forward to seeing you at a webinar again soon. Thank you very much, Finian.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone.